Once upon a time, there was a road that was infamous in the whole town. It was called the Haunted Road, and no one dared to pass through it after sunset. The dense forest on its either side made it look more ominous, and the meandering path created an eerie effect on the traveler's mind. Some rumors have it that a renowned witch used to live there, and her ghost still haunts the area. But none of the rumors deterred four friends, Jack, Sam, Lucy, and Emily, from passing through the haunted road. It was their favorite shortcut to reach nearby towns. They often drove through the road and joked about the tales around it. But soon their jokes turned into horror when they encountered something unexpected. On a gloomy evening, the four decided to take the haunted road to reach an eating joint they had heard praises of. Jack was driving, and Sam sat beside him. Lucy and Emily were sitting back. The sky was dark, and the only light source was Jack's headlights. They were passing through the road when suddenly the car halted, and the lights went out. "Shit, what happened?" Jack muttered. Sam tried to fix the lights, Lucy and Emily shrieked, and the surroundings started getting darker by the second. As they tried to fix the car lights, something moved behind a dense shrub nearby. "Holy crap, what's that?" Emily gasped. The others looked around, and their eyes caught something unusual. A woman was standing at the edge of the forest. She was wearing a tattered, old gown, and her hair was unkempt. Her eyes were hollow, making her look like an evil spirit. "Guys, let's get out," Sam suggested. But the car couldn't start, and they were stuck there. The woman started approaching them, and the friends started panicking. "Go away," Jack yelled. But the woman didn't stop, and soon she was standing right beside the car. Jack and Sam tried to restart the car's engine, but it didn't budge. Meanwhile, the woman started speaking. "I was waiting for you, my children," she said in a hoarse voice. The friends were terrified, and Lucy's screams suddenly filled the air as she saw a hand coming out of the trunk. It was a man's arm, and it looked like he was trying to come out. "Oh, God! We're doomed!" Emily cried. The car had now gone silent, and the group felt hopeless. They had entered the haunted road with no hassle, but now they were regretting it. They could only hear their heartbeats and the woman's cackles. "You can't escape me. This is my road," she said. The friends thought it was the end, but suddenly they heard a voice booming around them. "Get up, you teenagers," the voice commanded. The woman shrieked as the voice echoed, and soon, Jack's car engine started working again. The light came back on, and they saw that they were out of the haunted road. They thanked their lucky stars and started to drive away, but they could still hear the woman's laughter behind them. When they reached the restaurant, they found out that they had entered the haunted road at the wrong time. It was the night of the witch's curse. No one ever dared to pass through it on that night, and those who did never returned. The four friends eventually moved away from the town, but the memories of their haunted road encounter haunted them forever. They realized that some tales are not meant to be joked about and that some roads should be left unexplored. This was a great place to party, because it was hidden. If the cops stopped on the bridge above, we could easily get away through the woods to our cars parked half a mile downstream. This night was very clear, as the night wore on. A few of the girls in the group, who just returned from a bathroom break, looked visibly shaken. The girls said they heard the voice of a girl saying in low tones, "Come up to the road and talk with me." Of course, the rest of the group started teasing them, but you could see they were scared. One boy decided that telling ghost stories was a good idea. Of course, this did not go over too well with the two scared girls. So after a few good tales, one guy got real serious, and said we should ask Adeline to join our party. Of course, everyone in the group asked who Adeline was. The guy said, "She lives in the woods around the bridge. Sometimes you can see her on the road, or on the bridge. She will be 20 forever, and will never leave this place, but it's been rumored that other groups partying right here would have a strange girl join the party, never say anything, then would walk off into the woods, and disappear. It's also said that if you call her name softly, she might join the party depending on her mood. Sometimes people have said, you can hear singing an old tune on the bridge. They say don't stare at her too long, and if you are driving right around here at night, and you see her on the bridge, stop, turn around, and go another way." Everybody in the group was deathly scared now. This same guy said, "She has been watching us since we arrived. She wants people to stay with her, and keep her company." Everyone got real quiet. Then we heard singing on the bridge above us. It stopped. Then we heard a soft laughter, not of mirth, but otherworldly. The whole group fled, never to return. When we reached our cars, the lights were on, all the doors were open, and they were running. As we approached the cars, they all shut off, and we heard that same laugh emanating from the woods. Then we saw her. It was a dark and stormy night as we made our way down the abandoned road. The rain was coming down in sheets, hitting the windshield of our car like rocks. I could feel my stomach churning with fear as we drove deeper into the darkness. The road was winding and narrow, and the trees on either side of it seemed to tower high above everything else. As we drove further into the darkness, I could see strange shapes moving in the shadows. My heart was racing and I could feel my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Suddenly, a loud crash came from my right side, and the car began to spin out of control. I tried to grab onto the steering wheel, but it was too late. The car crashed into the ditch and the lights went out. I woke up to the sound of rain hitting the car roof. I felt disoriented and confused, but quickly remembered what had happened. I tried to open the car door, but it was jammed shut. I could feel the fear rising within me as I realized that we were completely trapped. Then, I heard a strange sound coming from outside. It sounded like someone was walking towards us, but there was nobody there. Suddenly, I saw a shadowy figure moving towards the car. It had red eyes and an eerie glow around it. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest as it got closer and closer. Then, the figure began to speak. "You have trespassed on my land. You must pay the price." Its voice was deep and raspy, and it sent shivers down my spine. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. The figure began to circle the car, its eyes glowing brighter and brighter with every step. Suddenly, it let out an ear-piercing scream and the car shook violently. I felt a sudden surge of terror as I realized that we were facing something beyond human comprehension. The figure continued to circle the car, its screams becoming louder and more terrifying. I knew that we had to get out of there before it was too late. I tried the car door again, but it was still jammed shut. Then, my eyes caught something in the darkness. There was a small house in the distance, and there were lights on inside. I knew that we had to make a run for it. Slowly, We got out of the car and began to run towards the house. The rain was coming down harder than ever, but we kept running. We could still hear the figure screaming and howling behind us as we ran. We finally made it to the house and pounded on the door, hoping someone would answer. To our relief, the door opened and we were greeted by a man who looked like he had just seen a ghost. "What are you doing here?" he asked, his voice shaking. "We were in a car accident and we need help," I managed to say. The man looked at us for a moment before finally nodding and letting us inside. As soon as we stepped into the house, we knew that something was wrong. The walls were covered in strange symbols and there was a smell of decay in the air. The man led us into the living room and offered us a seat. As we sat there, we could hear strange noises coming from upstairs. It sounded like someone was moving things around, but there was nobody up there. I could feel the fear rising within me again as I realized that we were not safe here either. Suddenly, the man stood up and walked towards the staircase. "I'll be right back," he said, his voice shaking. As he climbed the stairs, I could hear his footsteps echoing throughout the house. Then, suddenly, there was a loud crash and the man let out a blood-curdling scream. I leapt out of my seat and ran towards the staircase. I could see the man lying at the bottom of the stairs, his neck twisted at an unnatural angle. I knew that we had to get out of there before something happened to us too. We ran out of the house and back into the rain. As we made our way down the road, we could still hear the eerie laughter of the figure behind us. We had to keep running, no matter what. We finally made it to a gas station and called the police. When they arrived, they found nothing but an empty road and a twisted wreck of a car. Nobody knew what had happened to us that night, but all who have driven down that road have their own stories of horror to tell. From then on, I never ventured down that haunted road again. Something dark and twisted lives there, and I fear that it will never leave. It is a place of darkness and despair, where only the bravest of souls dare to tread. And if you ever find yourself on that road, remember my warning and turn back before it's too late. Lori and her family moved to Pontiac, Illinois, in 1975. She didn't want to start a new life in a new town. Her father had recently retired from the army, and had accepted a job at Pontiac prison. Lori was used to moving, so this was nothing new. But it was still hard. She was starting her junior year in high school, she got her license earlier in the year, she got a part-time job right away, when they moved here in June. With the extra money she was making, she talked to her parents, and they decided she could have a private phone line in her room. The home they moved into was very old. In her room was a very large walk-in closet. Inside the closet was a built-in chest of drawers. All the drawers opened very easily, except the bottom drawer. Finally one day, she got it open. The only thing inside was a very old phone. It intrigued her. The day her phone line was being set up, she asked the installer if the old phone she had found would work. At first he looked at her oddly, but finally said, "Let's see." He hooked it up, and surprisingly it did. Actually, Lori was very happy. Now she doesn't have to spend money on a new phone. That very night, the old phone started ringing. It shocked her something fierce. It was 1 a.m., and she had not given out her new number to anyone yet. Slowly she picked up the receiver. Before she could speak a word, the voice on the other end spoke. "Hello, my name is Adeline. I have been seeing you." Quickly Lori hung up the phone. The voice was beyond creepy. It sounded odd. Very odd. Lori liked the old phone, but she unhooked it and put it on a table in the corner. The next day she went out and bought a new phone. That's when it started. Many odd things. Every night at 1 a.m. her phone would ring. She answered each time, to hear the same greeting she had heard on the old phone. She would always hang up right away. But each time the caller seemed more urgent. Each day when she would get home from school, her mom would give her the same message. "A girl named Adeline wants you to call her." Each time she heard this message from her mother, it made her skin crawl. Her mom's voice and demeanor would change also. A few times Lori asked her mom about the caller. But her mom always acted like she didn't know what she was talking about. Each night Lori would hear noises coming from her closet. It was scary. Occasionally when she was driving, the radio would fade out, then it would start playing music from the 1920s. It was all becoming too much to bear. One day at school while she was digging around in her locker, she noticed something written on the back part of the locker. What it said made Lori turn ghost white. "Since you won't talk to me, I will be seeing soon. Adeline." Lori was so shook up, she decided to go and see the school nurse. Her stomach was in knots. She had the chills. The school nurse was very old. Lori had heard the nurse had been working at the school for over 50 years. Right away, Lori started telling the old nurse what was happening to her. She could tell the old nurse was hardly listening to anything she had to say. This was making her frustrated. But when she said the name Adeline, the old nurses grew wide. The old nurse leaned in close to Lori and slowly whispered in her ear, "Don't ever say that name again." Then the old nurse withdrew and turned around and walked away, with her back still to Lori. The old nurse started giggling like a young woman. Then she stopped. And she spoke. "I will be seeing you very soon. Very soon. Very soon." Lori quickly left the nurse's office. She decided at that moment, she was gonna ditch the rest of the day at school and go home. When she got home, she remembered her mother had mentioned she would be gone all day. Without anyone in the house, Lori felt desperately scared. She slowly walked up the stairs. Instantly she could hear a muffled voices coming from her room. It was very strange. One of the voices was her new boyfriend Ben. But why was he here? They had only been dating a few weeks, and he had never been inside her house. A little voice inside her head told her to run. But where? She asked back. Instead she stood still and listened. The voices stopped. Then she heard Ben speak. His voice sounded malicious. "Come inside your room, Lori. Someone wants to meet you." In that second Lori turned to run. Something grabbed her from behind. Her struggles were futile. All she could smell was damp, decaying death. Then she passed out. Lori woke up groggy. She realized right away, her hands and feet were bound. Duct tape was over her mouth. As she looked around, it was dark outside. She was in a moving car. Her car. Then as she looked, she saw Ben was driving. The radio was blasting music from the 1920s. Finally, after a few minutes, the car stopped. Ben turned around and looked at her. He had a malicious grin on his face. His eyes were bright green. Then he spoke. "Let's get out. Someone is dying to meet you." Ben pulled Lori out of the back seat. Then he leaned her against the car. After this he walked about 10 feet away. What Lori saw made her eyes grow wide with utter fear. A grotesque figure hobbled out from behind some trees. It hobbled up next to Ben. And in one swift second, the hobbled figure grabbed Ben, twisting his head all the way around. Then the hobbled figure tossed Ben into the rushing Rooks Creek. Lori tried to move, but she couldn't. The hobbled figure came closer. Lori closed her eyes, waiting for death to take her. But nothing happened. Slowly Lori opened her eyes. As she looked up, instead of the grotesque hobbled figure, a beautiful young woman from a distant time was standing before her. Then she spoke. "You lived in my house. You had my bedroom. You had my phone. But you wouldn't speak to me. We could have been best friends. Why wouldn't you talk to me? Will you talk to me now?" Slowly Lori nodded yes. The beautiful young woman gently removed the tape from her mouth. Then she spoke again. "Hello, my name is Adeline. I am dead." Later that night Lori got in her car and drove back home. She had a big smile on her face. She had a new best friend. And that made her happy. Every night Lori talks to her new best friend on the old phone. Each night, she slowly loses her sanity. Ben's body was never found. Everyone assumes he ran away. Only 2 people know what happened to Ben. One is dead. Lori is alive. But she is not talking. Well, not to you or me. She only talks to Adeline. Ring.